end of the year, so it's everybody's favorite time. I'm going to be talking about GP year-end close. So as part of the year-end close, there is a year-end service pack that comes out. It's very important. It's required, actually, for those folks using Payroll in GP to get that service pack installed. For everybody else, it's not obviously as critical. Sometimes they do make updates to the 1099 window or fields, and so that would be like included in a year-end service pack. I don't think they've done that this year. So the year-end service pack, it's an all-inclusive service pack, meaning it's taken into account all prior service pack bug fixes and you know, everything rolled into one. So later on in the session today, we are going to talk about the GP roadmap and what, you know, the life and timeline of GP looks like. As you can see from this slide, for year-end updates, this is the last year, if you are using Payroll, that you could be on 2015. You'll get one more tax update, and then we'll need to make sure you are upgraded to 2016, 2018. Obviously, would take you to the latest version. As you can see, GP 2018, the service pack that comes out or came out at the end of this year, once we apply that service pack, GP 18 is just now called Microsoft Dynamics GP. They are moving away from the 2015, 2016, 2018 part in the name of GP. So going forward, it's just going to be Microsoft Dynamics GP. So year-end close planning. It's good to sit down and think about, you know, and kind of plan out the year-end process. For those of you with inventory, this is a good time to maybe schedule a physical inventory. I know a lot of people try to get that done at year-end. You know, there's some cleanup that can be done at year-end. We'll kind of talk about that as we go through the year-end close process. But some planning tips. Select an optimal time. So, you know, year-end is crazy. Obviously, you know, it just seems like it's a busier time of the year than others. So you want to make sure you have adequate time to go through the closing process so you're not rushed and you don't make mistakes or skip a step like not doing a backup, because that could be really a bad idea. You want to develop a work plan. So you kind of want to have a step-by-step guide, what modules you're going to close, what order you're going to close them. You know, if you are doing a physical inventory, put some dates out there of when these things are going to happen. That way everybody on the team knows and can plan and prepare for that. Have a contingency plan. And basically the contingency plan is make sure you have good backups before we start doing any kind of year-end close processing. If you have backups, then we can always restore if something goes awry. But you also want to plan for, you know, in case somebody's out sick, that's critical to a particular process. You just want to have, you know, things kind of buttoned up so that it goes smoothly. All right, so some steps to complete before year-end. First off, we want to, if it hasn't already been set up, you want to create your new fiscal year. So 2020, you want to get it created if it's not already done. Backups. Backup all databases, including the Dynamics database. If there's any codes or you have a lot of modified forms and reports, you may want to take a copy of that as well. I have optional on here for performing check links, but we highly recommend it, especially for people that are processing a lot of transactions in the system, purchasing, sales, inventory. It's a good habit to get into to run check links prior to year end. Basically what check links does is it ensures that all the data is good. You know, sometimes you may run into a power fluctuation or connectivity issue, and you want to make sure that the data that's in the system is in all the tables, and you know, you don't have any broken records. So check links will go through and do that for you. Some folks run this, kick it off on a Friday night and let it run over the weekend. Depending on how much data you have in the system, you know, it could take some time. So again, plan ahead. It's also recommended that you run the reconcile utility on the following modules: purchase order processing, sales order processing, and then inventory. And you want to run reconcile in that order. Again, this just ensures that all the records and data is in good form. Other steps: post final entries in the closing year. Get everything posted before you go through the close process. For the GL close, you can close GL and still do journal entries to the last closed year. So you do not have to wait until March or April or however long it takes for the auditors to come back with any adjusting entries. You can close GL so that you can produce a January balance sheet, and you can go back and enter any adjusting entries back into the closed year. GP handles it. GP will recognize that the year's been closed, so it will automatically roll balances forward or move amounts into retained earnings as you do these entries. So there's nothing else you need to do, no secondary close or anything. Another good thing to do before you do close, specific to the GL, is verify that you're maintaining history for both accounts and transactions. Those should be checked, by default, but it can't hurt to check. It's just a good check to do. Okay, this is a big one. Verify that the posting type on all of your GL accounts are set up properly. Balance sheet accounts should be set to balance sheet. P&L accounts should be set to P&L. It takes 5 or 10 minutes to run a smart list and check your accounts. But what happens is if you don't do that and you have a P&L account that maybe got set up incorrectly and shows as a balance sheet, that balance is going to roll forward. It's not going to roll into retained earnings. So now you have a discrepancy with retained earnings and prior year information. We can fix it, and we get calls in January every year to fix it. But if you can avoid calling us by checking your accounts on the front end, you're one step ahead of the game. Other steps to complete before we close the GL specifically. You want to review and make sure that the retained earnings account is correct in the general ledger setup window. And if you are closing to divisional retained earnings, is anybody doing that in this room? Okay. You just want to make sure that you have a retained earnings account for each location in that division. Otherwise, when you go through the year-end close, you'll get errors. So payroll. Anybody in here doing payroll in GP? Okay. There's payroll checklist. Payroll is independent of the other modules in GP because it closes on kind of a different timeline. But here's a checklist. I have a lot of information around payroll. There is, with the year-end update, there is a new W-4 form for 2020. And so there's additional fields in GP that that get populated with that information, and I have a good detailed article and links to information on that. So like I said, payroll's a little bit different from the other modules. You do have to do the, update, year-end update, and then after you process the last payroll in 2019, you need to update the taxes for 2020 so you can begin running 2020 payroll. So summary of year-end close procedures. If you are closing all of the modules in GP, you want to do it in this specific order. You want to close inventory, then receivables, then payables, fixed assets, and then general ledger. Again, payroll kind of operates on its own schedule. The following modules do not have a year-end close procedure attached to them. So sales order processing, purchase order processing, bank rec, HR, project accounting. There's no specific year-end close process for those modules. Optional year-end tasks. So again, thinking and planning ahead, you have the ability to, during the year-end close process, there are some optional tasks that you can do as part of closing, in this case, the inventory module. So for inventory, during year-end close, we can remove discontinued items from the system. We can remove sold lot attributes, and we can remove sold receipts and cost change history. Now, there are some caveats with this, and again, there's some planning that needs to take place ahead of time. Sometimes it's, removing historical data from the system and stuff, but we're happy to talk you through it and give guidance and help plan for those activities. Optional tasks for the GL. You can remove unused segment numbers, and you can maintain or not inactive GL accounts. Again, there's planning that needs to take place because GP doesn't allow you to remove, in this case, like inactive accounts if there's historical data tied to it. So we would have to talk about potentially removing that and what that looks like. But all right, so once you've closed the modules, good housekeeping tips here. Close all the fiscal periods then for 2019 so that people don't go back and mistakenly enter something to the closed year. You'll also notice that once you close 2019, the year is going to be marked as a historical year. There's going to be a checkbox next to where it says historical year. Good habit is initially after you run through your closing process, take a second backup, because if for whatever reason you need to restore, this would be a good restore point versus going back to the backup you took before you started the close process. because then you'd have to run through everything again. Obviously, if you're going to run through and close all of the modules individually, it's recommended you take backups in between each closing, because then again you can revert back if you need to for whatever reason. So any questions on year end? I mean, we didn't dig into each of the modules, in the process, but a lot of the year end for closing AR, closing AP, closing inventory, it really revolves around the smart lists and zeroing out the year-to-date information on the smart list. So some people are very diligent about closing all of the modules each year. Some people don't. Obviously, you have to close payroll. You have to close GL. It's good habit to close the others, but it's not a requirement like the other two, I would say. Fixed assets you have to close as well. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
If you close out the AR and we realize that it is post-company, can we still go back into the previous year and post-company?
Yes. So the question is, if you close the AR, the receivables module, and then found you missed something, can you go back and enter it? And the question is, yes, you can. What that will affect, though, is whatever transaction that is will start accumulating in the year-to-date totals for 2020. But yeah, it doesn't really hurt anything else. Other questions? This will provide the slides out to everybody, and of course, a lot of people that are newer to the system, I know, companies have turnover and stuff. We're here to help. So reach out. We do a lot of hand-holding and button pushing when it comes to year end. So we are happy to assist any way we can.